Okay, this is Teacher Kirk again, and I'm going to show you how to do your in-text citations. In order to do your in-text citations, you want to start with your correctly formatted reference page. This is an example of a reference page in APA style. I'm using this from a student's work that I adapted, and there are some mistakes here, but in general, this reference page is formatted correctly. Once you have your references correctly formatted in APA style, it's very easy to generate the in-text citations. So let me go to an old PowerPoint presentation where I've got summarized the basic ways to do in-text citations. But before we do that, we'll go back to this paper where we just were so that we can see what an in-text citation looks like in context. I have mentioned in class that for this paper I added some color just to highlight different sections. Obviously in a real paper in APA style, in the one that you guys print, you're not going to have these colors. So here's our paper in APA style. Here's the cover page. Here's the abstract with some color added. And here's the heart of the paper. You can see the formal title, which is centered, and then we start in with paragraphs, and each paragraph is indented. There is no extra space between the individual paragraphs. Here's the first body paragraph after the introduction. So this is the one on the opposite side in the style we're using in our class. And here we see in red the first in-text citation. Well, this means that this information, this concrete detail, came from two different articles, one by Gallo and one by Hartman. Then there's another concrete detail, and this information came from the article by Gallo. And then there's another concrete detail, and this information came from an article where apparently we did not have the author's name, but these two words come from the original title of the article. So these little things in parentheses that indicate what source on the reference page the information came from, those are your in-text citations because they appear within the regular text of the paper, in-text citations. So let's go back to that PowerPoint presentation, and here you can see a summary of different types of in-text citations. And in the first type, when we let me get some tools here. When we mention, if we can mention the author within the sentence, then we're only going to mention the date in parentheses. Imagine you don't want to mention the author within the sentence for one reason or another. Well, then you would mention the author's name with the date at the end of the sentence, just like this. When you don't have the author's name, we saw an example like that just a moment ago. When you don't have the author's name, you use one or two words from the title, and you use quotation marks, just like this. Let me see if I can draw. Apparently not. So we want to use quotation marks when we're indicating that we don't have the author's name, and this is, in this case, the first word to the title of the article. Notice that the comma comes after the second quotation mark here within the in-text citation in parentheses. So the order of the position of the comma is important. This is correct APA style. If we're using this style parenthetically, where you don't mention the author within the sentence, and you don't have a date, just like on the reference page, when you don't have a date, you use this ND. So Kikinos, comma, ND means that the Kikinos article did not have a date. Another option is when an association like a government department publishes the material. This would be true, for example, if the Secretaría de Educación Pública, the SEP, in Mexico, published some material and you used one of their articles as a source. So then you would put Secretaría de Educación Pública as in place of the author. So just as we have Kikinos in this article, when a department, a government department, or an association publishes the article, you use the name of the association in place of the author, and then you have a comma, and then you have a date. There's another option here, and it's when we use a quotation, and this is the only time for my class in which you will include after the quotation in parentheses the page number or the paragraph number, and so that's how that would appear when you have a quotation. So let's go to the sample paper, if I can pull it up. Here we are again with the sample paper, and now we have moved up to some of the first in-text citations, and we can see these examples. Apparently this concrete detail was found in more than one source, and so the student correctly included 2 in-text citations. Let's go to the reference page and see if we can find these references. There's one by Gallo, 2014, and there's one by Hartman in 2009. So we're going to the reference page. These should all be in alphabetical order. Well, here's the source from Gallo in 2014. Here's the complete source as it's found on the reference page. Notice that for the in-text citation, we only use his last name. We don't use the initial, and we use the date. So let's look at the one from Hartman, and it also coincides with the in-text citation that we just saw. The second source was Hartman, 2009. Now let's jump back up to that paragraph, and we see next there's another concrete detail from Gallo. That's the same article that we just saw, and then we have an example here of apparently when the author's name did not appear in the source. So now, and this indicates that these are the first 2 words in the title of the article, and this article came without a date. So now let's find this source on the reference page. in APA style, when you don't have the author's name on the reference page, you move up the title to the article, and it now takes the position of the author's name. So you don't have the author's name on the reference page. You move up the title to the article, and you put it in the position of the author's name. So whatever appears first on the reference page is what's going to appear in the in-text citation. Now, for that in-text citation, we only need 1 or 2 words from the name of the article. And in this case, 2 words is sufficient. If you had another article with the same language, then you would have to use more than 2 words in your in-text citation in order to be able to distinguish it from a different article that had similar language. So in this case, we don't have anything that resembles this. We're going to go ahead and use 2 words from the title of the article in our in-text citation, and it's going to be very easy to find that source on the reference page if necessary. So that's the idea behind in-text citations. You're giving information to the reader so that he can quickly find the complete source when he goes to the reference page. Well, what happens when you have more than one author? You're going to use the same style that you have on your reference page. Okay, so if you noticed that something changed here, it's because I found a mistake in the original in-text citation, and I'm going to blame the student for that. I didn't notice it before I started recording, but I just noticed it now. In this case, when we go to the reference page, we're going to find that this in-text citation refers to an article with multiple authors, and there are 2 authors with the last name of Smith, one with the last name of Schneider, and one with the last name of Ananiadu, and the article was written in 2014. So let's go to the reference page and let's see if that's true. Should all be in alphabetical order, and here it is. This is where that information came from. Smith, Schneider, and Anadu, and the article was written in 2014. So let's go back and take a look at it again. We can analyze it. We've got in parentheses only the last name Smith, a comma, the second Smith, a comma, Schneider, a comma, the and sign, and the last author Anadu with a comma, and the year 2014. You close the parenthesis, use the close parenthesis, and you have a period, and that is a complete in-text citation. And in your final paper, everything's going to be in black and white. Well, what happens if you have to refer, if you have another concrete detail that comes from the same source? Well, we just happen to have one right here. It's the next concrete detail. And the rule for APA is that the first time you mention a work with multiple authors, you mention the source completely. You mentioned all of the authors' names, and that's what we did here. We mentioned all of the authors' names. But the second time you mention concrete detail evidence from that same source, you can use Smith et al. And this is Latin, and it refers to the fact that it's the same series, long list of names that we just referred to. So you would not repeat all of their names in any subsequent mentioning of the same source. Every time you use this source, after the first time, you just use et al, and it means it's the same Smith source with multiple authors that you saw before. If you have multiple authors and you want to mention their names within the sentence, you would only mention their last names, and then you would give the date in parentheses, and that is your in-text citation. If there were only one author here, then you would say, for example, according to Hatzenbuehler, 2012, in a study, etc., etc., and that would be your in-text citation. So, is there anything else that I want to show you with that? I think that covers the majority of the types of in-text citations that you'll need to use in your paper. We've got in-text citations within a sentence. We've got them parenthetically. We've got them when you don't have the author's name, and we've got them when you don't have a date. Here are some more examples of the same that you can use to help you. Here we have within the sentence. Here we have when we don't have the author's name, and apparently exercise is the first word to the name of the article. And here we have an article with no date, and it comes from an article written by Magnus. And there's one more example here where we have an article written by two different authors. Their last names are Hoppen and Tavares, and the article was written in 2004. In this case, there is a quote, and when we have a quote, we do want to indicate where it came from, and this person is indicating that the specific section of the article and the number of the paragraph. So this would be appropriate for a long article, possibly on a web page, where the writer has made it very easy to find this quotation again, if necessary, by indicating exactly which section of the article he got the quotation and the number of the paragraph that it came from. That should be all that you need to do your in-text citations. Remember that they are a requirement. If you're missing your in-text citations, you lose a lot of points on the paper. And be sure that they coincide with your reference page, and be sure that everything that you print in your final paper, the one that you staple together, is all in black and white. That's all for now. Have a nice day.